My name is Maniza Naqvi, and this is the 21st episode of the Little Book Company podcast. Today, I am honored to be in conversation with Ameena Saiyid. She is the doyen of publishing in Pakistan, having led Oxford University Press, Pakistan, as its managing director for several decades. Now she is the managing director of Lightstone Publishers. Among many initiatives while at OUP, she started the wonderful Karachi Literature Festival and Islamabad Festival and others. Now, for the past 5 years, she holds the annual Adaab Festival in Karachi, a welcome increase in literary forums in the city. Welcome, Ameena.
Thank you, Maniza.
Ameena, you are now heading Lightstone Publishers, and I just wanted to ask you, this is your own venture?
Yes, it is. I have a few partners in it who are also directors, but it is mainly owned by me. But we are all working for it together.
And I, as you know, and as I know, publishing is such a struggle. How is your venture going?
Well, Maniza, it's actually going so well that I'm actually having to let go of several publishing opportunities, other opportunities, because I don't want to be in a position where we take on a lot of work and then we delay projects. So we want to remain lean and efficient and turn around books as fast as possible. So that's why actually we have our hands full. And I just want to say that this is the first wholly women-owned company, publishing company in Pakistan. I mean, wholly women-owned and entirely Pakistani-owned. So we are very proud of that.
Wonderful, Ameena. And what kind of books are you publishing at Lightstone Publishers?
So far we've published over almost 300 books over the last 5 years. We have sort of core business is school textbooks. So that is school textbooks in all subjects like English, Urdu, maths, science, social studies, Islamiyat, and grammar, so computer studies. For preschool, right up to class 8, because for 9 and 10, then they move on to, if it's a Cambridge school, they move on to Cambridge curriculum books, or for metric schools, they move on to textbook board books. So that's how we go up to class 8. That's 13 to 14-year-old.
And other than
and we also, in addition, we are publishing general books, fiction and non-fiction. And that is also keeping us very busy. So far, we've published about 25 such books.
25 books of fiction or both, for fiction and non-fiction?
Fiction and non-fiction.
And what have you... Go ahead.
I would say an equal number of both, because, we were all, my partners and I, Nadia Ghani and Sadia Mirza, we were very conscious of the fact that, there's that Pakistani writers are going to Indian publishers or some to Western publishers. And we really wanted to publish fiction ourselves and provide a good platform for them. And I must say, I was overwhelmed with manuscripts. So we are doing quite a lot of fiction as well as non-fiction.
I seem to remember, and of course I'm going to remember, that you had also started the initiative of publishing original fiction at Oxford University Press, Pakistan, and my novel Mass Transit was the first experiment there that you published, for which I am eternally grateful. But then Oxford University Press worldwide stopped that.
That's right. Well, as you mentioned, I was the MD there for 30 years.
Mhm.
So I think in the first decade, there was no such restriction. And I was very keen to publish Pakistani writers. And of course, your book came along, and it was an excellent book, a brilliant book. And we published it. And then we published your second one also, I think, on air.
Mhm.
Um, and then, I went on to publish Mohsin Hamid as well, The Reluctant Fundamentalist.
And
Um,
Kamla Shamsi.
Kamla Shamsi also.
Mhm.
Um, but unfortunately, and I know at some stage I received a copy of A Case of Exploding Mangoes.
Did you?
I think it was probably the agent who sent it.
Mhm.
And, I was so um, disappointed that that we were not allowed to publish fiction anymore.
Yeah.
And, we had to let go of such some really wonderful books. Actually, it wasn't just fiction. This was, as you said, a global policy of OUP, and we had to comply. The other was poetry. We couldn't publish contemporary poetry.
Yeah. What a pity.
Uh, I know, which also, and also memoirs later was stopped,
Mhm.
and coffee table books.
But now
Um,
with your own independent house, you can do whatever you like.
Absolutely. I'm feeling so excited, and I'm feeling liberated.
Mhm.
Not only can I do what I like, publish whatever I feel like, I can actually, do a very quick turnaround. Now there are some books that we've published in 6 months, whereas at OUP it would take almost that long to just get to make a decision
Because
because
it's
we had to
democracy.
go
Yes.
through so many
Mhm.
hoops.
I mean,
So
I'm.
it's a
Uh,
it's a wonderful feeling.
yes, it
I'm
should be.
feeling liberated.
You should
I
feel.
wish I'd done it. Sorry.
You should feel liberated.
Yes, I wish I'd done it 10 years earlier.
You know, all of us who leave the big bureaucracies always end up saying, I wish I had left it 10 years earlier. Um, but at the same time, those bureaucracies give us a lot. They were wonderful places to work and learn, and they did make us, no?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, when I first took over OUP, before that, I was running my own little publishing company called Sayyid Books.
Oh,
Well,
really?
yes, I ran that for 2 years. I shouldn't call it a publishing company because it never became one because I didn't have the resources. But that was my dream to publish. But initially, I had to make some money and to to stay afloat. So I started. I became a trader. I would import books from the UK. I went to the UK, visited lots of publishers, placed a lot of orders, and got imported those books. I mean, that's a long story.
Tell me.
It was a one-woman company, so I would actually my briefcase was my office. My office was in one of my mother's one of the rooms in my parents' house.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but I would get into my own little car, drive to the bank with my briefcase office, and then I would, and in those days you needed to get an import license and open letters of credit in order to import, and I would do that at the bank with a banker, and I must say I have to name the banker because he was superb, Raza Rahim.
Okay.
Of course, later he went on to become a very big banker, but then he was relatively junior in his position. And he was so supportive because there I was, I'd open my briefcase, take out my checkbook, take out my letterhead, take out my stamps. I had everything there. I would do things then and there, and my consignments would arrive. And then I would drive to the airport and clear the consignments myself because I couldn't afford clearing agents.
Uh-huh.
And then I would hire Suzuki, load the consignments in the Suzuki,
Uh-huh.
go back to my office. In the meantime, before ordering, I would get orders. I would do the marketing and promotion and get orders. So then I would come back, type the invoice myself.
Huh?
Um, I had somebody to actually help me carry and with the cartons and things. So the books are repacked in cartons according to orders,
Uh-huh.
and again put either in my little Suzuki or in a hired van, and we would drive to the truck adda, where I would get those, send those off to Lahore, Islamabad, wherever I got an order from.
So
Um,
you were living in Karachi and you're living at your mother's house, and this would be in PCHS. So where was the house?
yes, this was in PCHS,
Uh-huh.
in my mother's house, just off Shara Faisal.
Uh-huh.
You know, and it was a very large house, so I had a room which I had, I put shelves in and made it into a nice office.
And what color was the Suzuki?
It was navy blue. I still remember.
Uh-huh.
And it used to be such a hassle because sometimes I would park the car somewhere
Uh-huh.
and I'd come back and find the car gone because I had parked it wrongly. So, and
And,
then I would run around and get it was towed away.
uh-huh. And
So it was
how old were
I was
you?
very young. I was in my 30s.
Uh-huh. But you
So,
were you married by then?
yes, yes, I was married. I had 3 children.
You had three children at that time.
Yes, I had to drop them to school and pick them up
Uh-huh.
every day.
And you
And in between, I would do all my work, all my outside work
uh-huh.
while they were at school.
Uh-huh.
And after school, I would then do my invoicing and correspondence.
And was your car
Uh,
loaded down with books?
well, actually, the Suzuki really held out. It did a great job
Yeah.
picking. And then, in the evening at 5 o'clock, I had to pick up my husband
Uh-huh.
from his office. So I was the family driver,
Uh-huh.
um, and of course the company driver.
Uh-huh.
Um, which
And
is why sometimes I got into trouble parked in wrong places. Um, but it worked out somehow. And of course, I would go to the airport constantly. My consignments were not so big that they had to be shipped,
uh-huh.
so they were all air freighted. But somehow things fell into place. You know, in the sense that my business was, I was getting orders, I was supplying books, I was receiving payment, I was making payments to my principals from whom I was importing books. And they were being imported from the UK as well as from India, because then we had trade was open with India. And, I saw that my bank balance was rising, uh, but again, not enough to publish. And so I was feeling frustrated. I wanted to publish.
Mhm.
And I said, what is this? I've become a trader. I'm importing and selling books. And then this offer came along from OUP.
How did that happen?
Well, they were looking for a head.
Mm-hmm.
They were actually looking for a head of the Pakistan branch.
Mm-hmm.
So two people came from the UK, Charles Lewis and Roger Boning.
Mm-hmm.
They came to Karachi. That was in 1988.
Mm-hmm.
And they were meeting people and interviewing people. So somehow they got in touch with me and they said, if you would like to come for an interview. So I said, okay. I went for an interview. I still remember it was at the Marriott Hotel in Karachi.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a very long and a very good interview, after which both of them said that, would you like to have dinner with us? I said, sure. So we went to the Avari Hotel, Fujiyama,
Mm-hmm.
and had a Japanese dinner, and we continued our discussion.
Mm-hmm.
So after they got in touch with me again, and they said, well, we would like to offer you the position of marketing director.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, marketing director? But I'm the proprietor of my own business. I own my company and the business is doing well. So they said, what do you mean? What position do you want? I said, managing director.
Oh,
And I thought that was a very fair, because, after all, I was a proprietor of it, maybe a small business, but so was OUP, a very small business in those days.
Wow.
So they said, oh, hum de hum, then hawed. And eventually they offered me the position of managing director.
Oh my goodness. That was really badass. And what
I
a
know,
move.
but and they called me to Oxford. But I mean, before making that, they said you have to come to Oxford because we need more interviews. So in Oxford, I went off there
Uh-huh.
and met the chief executive and other people.
Uh-huh.
And after the interview, while I was there, they said, "Can you sign the letter of appointment?" They said, "We've decided. Here's the letter of appointment." So actually, before that, before I was going to Oxford, I knew that when I go to Oxford, they would make an offer, a formal offer.
Of
So
course.
I told my family, my parents and my husband, and children were too little. My sister Noshaba. I told all of them that this is what my plan is. I'm getting this offer and I'm going to accept. So my sister said, "You must be mad." So I said, "Why?" She said, "You've got your own business. You own your own business. It's growing. You're doing well. Why are you leaving it for a salaried job?" So I said, "Appa, I can't. I can't publish. I don't have the money to publish.
Mm.
I can only import and sell books, and I don't find that rewarding, sufficiently rewarding."
Mm.
So she said, "Well, be patient. Wait. You'll reach that stage." But I think I wasn't patient enough.
Mhm.
So I ignored her advice and I accepted and
Wow.
came back and took over.
Mhm. And that at
Um,
that point, uh, the Oxford University Press offices were on Sharai Faisal.
that's right. It was a rented house. It was actually somebody's home,
Uh-huh.
and it was rented. And it was it's a tiny operation. I think the maybe 20 staff or something.
Uh-huh.
And when I left, there were 600 staff members.
Yes.
So we had really grown.
The place where I came to bring my manuscript and to meet you was at that office on Sharai Faisal, which had a veranda, and it was a house basically.
Absolutely, I remember clearly. And outside in the veranda, there would be staff, and I
Mhm.
used to feel very bad about it.
I thought it was lovely.
Uh,
It was lovely.
I know
It had that
that
very
was
buzzing,
where I started.
atmosphere, a small operation, all hands on deck. It was, yeah, it had that feel of a publishing house, right? And
Yes,
um, so, wow, Ameena, what a story. I
as
had no idea. And where did you go to college? Where was your education?
well, initial education was in the U.S.
Hmm.
in New York and San Francisco because my father was the consul general, head of mission in New York and San Francisco, the
Really?
Pakistan consulate. Yes, that's right.
Hmm.
So I went to public school number 17 in New York, in Queens.
Okay.
And Maniza, I joke that people go to school with a name, but my school had a number.
Uh-huh.
And when we arrived there in New York, I must have been I think 7 or 8. I didn't know a word of English
Uh-huh.
because I was actually just spoke Urdu at home all the time.
Yes.
So it was the first time that I arrived. We got off the boat in New York, and it was the first time that I saw white skin. I
No.
was horrified. I saw a woman standing in front of me in white skin, and her legs were visible. I had never seen women's legs. So actually, I went up to her and started touching her legs to make sure that she's a human. And she said, "Go away, go away." It was hilarious. But even when I went to school, I didn't know any English. But
Uh,
within 3 weeks, I was speaking fluently.
What?
And I remember my teacher telling me that I wish I could learn French as fast as you've learned English. You know, being thrown in at the deep end, I had to speak in English.
And did you find the school in Queens welcoming?
Well, actually, I didn't
Uh-huh.
because, and the main reason was A, initially I couldn't speak their language.
Uh-huh.
B, my mother used to pack, it was a full day school, so lunch had to be packed. So my mother would pack an omelette and a paratha.
Uh-huh.
And we would all be sitting there, and everybody would open their lunch boxes. And I would open mine and take out the omelette and paratha. And, all the children would hold their noses
Oh.
when they saw my. And used to be very upset. And I went home and I cried and I begged my mother that please don't send omelette and paratha. She said, but what would you like? I said, get white bread. And I described it. Put a slice of cheese in it, cut it like this, and send that. She said, but that's not healthy. Paratha is much better. And she continued sending the omelette and paratha. Um, but uh, actually, in the process, I made one friend. I still remember her name. It was Jenny. She
Uh-huh.
became a friend of. And if you have one friend, Maniza, life becomes worth living.
Yes. Yes.
So Jenny and I became friends, and then actually she would eat a bit of my omelette and paratha, and she didn't hold her nose.
Mm-hmm.
And then things got better, and I blended in very well with the school. The only problem with then was singing the American national anthem.
Uh-huh.
I had that much sense. And I told my brother who was in the school with me, I said, I don't want to stand there and say, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. He said, stupid, do you do that every day? I said, yes, I have to. What can I do? I'm scared. Because, I wanted to blend in also and
Yes.
be accepted.
Yes.
So he said, no, what you should do, you should say, I pledge allegiance to the flag of Pakistan. He said, say it softly and say it in your heart, Pakistan. And then you say the rest. So
Okay.
I was very happy. I started saying that every day.
How that is
So,
such a clever thing to have told you. And
yes, that's clever of him that, I didn't have to say it loudly. Otherwise, I would be again,
in
called
trouble.
out.
Yes. And Ameena, I really, your story about your omelette paratha resonates with me because as a child, well, I went to American schools, but I went to American schools in Pakistan, and Ammi would pack lunches for us too. And for me, she would pack a lunch, and it would be usually a kebab and maybe in in a bun, but it was a bun kebab basically. And when I would open,
Hmm.
had that same issue of being it smelling differently from the tuna sandwiches and cheese sandwiches that the other kids had. And I would feel really bad about that. And but my mother just insisted on that, and she just would not let me be ashamed in any way. But I did have a friend, and I'm going to take her name here. Her name is Karen, and she was my fast friend from grade 3. And she would trade her sandwich with mine and just love it. And another girl as well, Helen Andrews, who was British. So Karen was American and Helen was English, and they saved me from all of the feeling of being embarrassed or ostracized because my food was different. um, of course the world has changed so much that if children were eating omelette and paratha in Queens today, they would be considered so fashionable and trendy,
Yes, I can imagine.
right?
But it wasn't easy in those days. But how interesting that you went through a similar experience, Maniza.
Yes,
That's
when you told me about your experience in Queens, I thought, wow, I was experiencing that in Tarbela. Wow.
Amazing.
At
Yes.
what years were you here then? Would that have been in the 60s? In which,
This was actually, no, in the 50s.
in the 50s?
That's right. Yes. Then we went to San Francisco from New York,
Hmm. Hmm.
and I went to, but there my school had a name. It was called the Grant School.
Hmm.
And by then I had learnt English and I fitted in very well. And I was, um, you know, think life was much easier.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot of things over there. For example, my parents made me a member of the Jewish Community Center in San Francisco, which was a walk from my school, a longish walk. But after school, after school, I would go to a public library.
Uh-huh.
And actually, that's where my love of reading and books began, in that public library.
Uh-huh.
And do you have a minute? Can I tell you why?
I have many minutes.
Um, oh, lovely. You know, I would walk there. I was a scrawny, little, undersized, underweight brown girl. And I would walk to the library from the school. And then the librarian would come to me and help me. She would say that, what are you looking for? And she would guide me. And and then she saw that I used to come every day. So, and she would welcome me. And whenever I walked in, she would say, "Oh, hello, Ameena," and "How are you?" and what can I show you today? And I felt, 6 feet tall. I thought maybe I'm a very important person that she's giving me so much attention.
Uh-huh.
So I started loving going there simply because of the welcome I used to get from the librarian.
Hmm.
And I say this at every opportunity, that this is one way to get children into libraries, to make them feel important.
Right.
And then the way that she would help me, for example, she said, we are having a competition. You have to write a paragraph, a story in a paragraph, but every word in the story has to be taken from a nursery rhyme. So she said, you collect all those and write a little story.
Mm-hmm.
So, I must have read dozens of nursery rhymes over and over again. And I wrote my little story and gave it to her. I don't think I won a prize, but I got a big pat on the back from her.
Wow.
And, that's how I got in. There were many other games like that she would make me
Uh-huh.
join. And I became an avid reader.
Wow. Do you
And,
remember her name?
and all because of the librarian.
Mm-hmm.
It makes such a difference. Then from there, I would go to the Jewish Community Center,
Uh-huh.
where I was enrolled in the swimming class. And they taught me how to swim. And, just even today, I'm just coming back from swimming. That love is still with me,
Uh-huh.
sort of 70 years later. I that love for swimming and that love for reading, that it was only because of the teacher. This My swimming teacher was wonderful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, it just shows that if you have these wonderful experiences as a child, how they can impact you for the rest of your life.
Yeah. So that was 6 years then that you were in the United States at a young age.
No, less than 6 years.
Between six, and then you went back to Pakistan.
Yes, then we came back to Pakistan, and my two brothers and I, three of us were, because my other brothers are much older. We were enrolled in the Karachi grammar school, all three of us.
Mm-hmm.
And, again in the grammar school, by the time we came back, I was totally Americanized.
Mm-hmm.
I used to, the way I spoke, the way I acted, my behavior, and it was just unacceptable at the grammar school, that kind of behavior. I think I was overconfident or what. Um, so again, I would come home and cry and tell my mother that, put me in the American school
Mm-hmm.
because people make fun of my accent. Um, what can I do? Finally, it took me a while to shed the American accent.
Mm-hmm.
But because, I learned to speak over there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, but again, you know, of course, my mother was very firm. She said, no, we can't just put you in the American school. What about your brothers? We can't pay for all of you.
Mm-hmm.
So I continued, and then, again, things settled down. I made lots of friends. I had a grand time at KGS.
Mm-hmm. And then
Um,
where was college?
well, I did O and A levels from there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, then it was called Higher um, Cambridge School Certificate and Cambridge Higher School Certificate. Then I went to St. Joseph's College after that for BA. And there I had a ball at St. Joseph's.
Mm-hmm.
Had a lovely time. And
Why?
then I,
Why did you
sorry,
why did you have a lovely time at St. Joseph's?
well, we had a lot of freedom. I mean, more freedom than we had at school. But again, a lot of friends, one made a lot of friends over there. And it was, by then I was fully sort of, uh, all my American habits and behavior and all accent, all that had been shed.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't have any problem of settling in.
Mm-hmm.
I was one of them. And
Mm-hmm.
we just had a lovely time and, of course, doing all the naughty things, running out, hiding from the class and bunking class and all that. Um, but sitting in the canteen and joking and laughing.
Mm-hmm.
So it was good fun.
Again,
Really enjoyed it.
think my shared experience with you there is that I went to Kinnaird for 1 year, and the best time I had in Kinnaird was bunking class and sitting in the canteen.
Yes, I know. And I remember in those days, all of us, we tried to be very stylish and we would wear very fitted clothes.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to bound up and down the stairs in very tight, skin tight clothes. And I remember the principal, Sister Emily, would call me and shout, "Look at you, you look like a Coke bottle, and stop running up and down like a horse." And but somehow everything was funny. It never had any impact. I would go and tell my friends, and we would all have a good laugh. So it was a lovely time,
Yeah,
uh,
that is that.
Maniza.
I think college
But
lovely time. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Gigi, it was. I mean, education. Of course, there were ups and downs,
Mm-hmm.
uh, but um, but it's been good fun. And in Karachi, life in those days was fabulous. You
Mm-hmm.
could go to the beach, you could go to movies, you could go to anywhere in the city and not feel threatened or unsafe. And our parents also relaxed
Mm-hmm.
because it wasn't such a dangerous city.
Mm-hmm.
And my hobby in those days, in the 60s actually, was cycling. And my parents, actually, I was a tomboy, but I was also a big risk taker. So my parents used to be concerned about that. And they wouldn't buy me a bicycle because they thought I would go out of hand. I would beg them for a bicycle, but they wouldn't. But then I found out that you can rent them. So with little money, 1 or 2 rupees, I could rent a bicycle.
I didn't
And
know.
and again I went crazy. I mean, with my friends, we would cycle all over the PCHS.
Uh-huh.
And I remember there was a friend of my cousin of mine who didn't know how to cycle, but she was good fun. So I would pick her up. She would sit in the handlebar in the front, and we would go all over the place, or she'd sit in the back. And then one day I told her, I said, let's go to the airport and look at planes.
What?
So, from my house in the PCHS, I cycled with another person sitting at the back all the way to the airport.
My goodness.
And and again, we arrived there feeling fine, and except that we were thirsty. So we managed to pull together our money. We bought a Coke, which we shared. And then in those days, you could go up and you could actually see planes.
Mm-hmm.
So we just stood there, watched planes for a bit. hopped on the bicycle, came back.
Okay,
Um,
we're going to hold that image and take a pause here, Ameena, where we're in my mind, you're cycling from PECHS to the airport, and then you get there, you're looking at planes taking off and landing, and then cycling back. We'll be right back.
okay, Maniza.
So, Ameena, I'm thinking that the people who were interviewing you for the job at Oxford University Press at the Marriott Hotel, they saw something special about you.
Well, Maniza, I think we had a very good conversation, and afterwards, after they had appointed me, that after that they told me that we had interviewed many people, but when we met you, we felt that there's something that you were different,
Mm-hmm.
and they thought at that stage they thought that we felt that you haven't really had the experience, except that you've been running your own company, but it's a tiny company, and I was quite young. But they took the chance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I must say, I have to say, Maniza, both of them, I mean, then they became my bosses. Uh, one of the questions they asked me, they said that, why do you want this job? And then I told them, I said, look, I have my own business. It's flourishing, it's growing, but I don't have the resources to publish. And my ambition is to become a publisher.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I've, I'm interested in this job is that I feel that you will give me the resources to publish,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll give me the opportunities. And they were true to their word,
Mm-hmm.
Maniza. That when we started, actually the entire publishing department consisted of one editor and one production person.
Mm-hmm.
Editor used to edit all the books, and the production person would print them. So I said, what is this? We need more editors. We need a designer. We need an illustrator. So they laughed. They said, oh, where will you get a designer from? Um, there are no book designers in Pakistan. This was, in the, say, early 90s.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, well, if there are no designers in Pakistan, I'll get one from the UK. And, I used to go to Oxford regularly to meet people over there. And in the design department, there was a brilliant designer. Um, and I asked him, I said, would you come to Pakistan and design some books for us and help us find a designer?
Mm-hmm.
And he said, yes, sure, but you'll have to pay me. Um, I think maybe he wasn't an employee, or maybe he was a freelancer or something.
Mm-hmm.
And it was going to cost a lot because, he had to come for a couple of months. Um, but these people allowed it. My bosses said, sure, go ahead. So he came to Pakistan, stayed at the Marriott for 2 months,
Oh my goodness. Mm-hmm.
come to our office every day, and he would not only design books, but by then I did hire some people who had who I felt that would learn with talent, with some background, and he taught them. And then he said that he was designing covers for us, and all the technical things that he did. Um, and after that, there was no stopping me. Then I hired many other people for the editorial department,
Mm-hmm.
and I looked all over the world for training courses and for editors.
Mm-hmm.
And I was allowed to do that, and OUP was paying.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I sent six people to India, six editors, and it was a 2-week course on editing.
Mm-hmm.
They had a lovely time there because they would attend the course all day, and then they would go shopping or
Mm-hmm.
sightseeing in the evening.
Mhm.
And that worked out so well. I said, well, I'm going to send six more. And I carried on one after the other sending people. And then I said, okay, now marketing, who's doing marketing? Marketing staff are going, sales staff are going. So suddenly, we had highly trained people sales, sales, marketing, editorial, design. I
Mhm.
mean, it took a few years,
Mhm.
but the team was ready.
So you had the resources, and but you had parameters that you had to stay within, and within those you were able to grow this business.
Yes, absolutely. But as I said, they were very encouraging, very supportive. But of course, I remained within the policies and parameters.
Mhm.
I was very responsible that way. And so uh, built a very strong relationship of trust.
Mhm.
And, every book that we published, I had to send uh, a full proposal to the UK,
Mhm.
because there then they would review it, not just the OUP people, but, professors. They have what they called the delegates of Oxford University Press.
Right.
These were academics from various colleges
Mhm.
who met every 2 weeks.
Mhm.
They would review every proposal sent by every branch,
Mhm.
and then they would um, accept or reject. And in my entire 30 years there, they only rejected one book. Whatever proposal I sent was accepted, except that I have to say that I had also understood what their requirement is.
Mhm.
So I would try to meet that requirement, and they were very reasonable that way. That if their requirement was met, immediate approval
So
was.
you So this, I think, even applied to the fiction, because I remember you had told me that there'll be three reviewers who'll have to review the book before it could be accepted, and I waited for that. Was that also part of the same routine?
Yes, that's the same process exactly. For
Mm-hmm.
example, in the proposal that I sent, I had to give a description of the book,
Mm-hmm.
a synopsis, uh, chapters, chapter headings,
Mm-hmm.
one or two sample chapters, and of course the background of the author.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had to attach. Um, Actually, I would always send it to three people, but I had to attach two positive reviews.
Mm-hmm.
It had to be, and they had to be completely independent.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the author, I never told the author who the reviewers were.
I have
That was always
I
a
have no.
secret.
So
I don't think you know. I don't think you know who your reviewers
I
were
have no
before.
I have no idea. And
But,
but I am curious, and I know you won't be able to tell me, but who was the one that got rejected?
oh, I'll let you know. That was a book actually. It was very strange. It was about Sir Thomas Roe's um, embassy. He went as ambassador to the court of Jahangir.
Okay.
Uh,
Yes.
so now and it was about Sir Thomas Roe, a kind of a biography.
Hmm.
Now, one of the delegates, one of them, I don't know, there were about 15 or 18 of them. One of them was a professor of that particular period
Hmm.
in history. And there's something in the book that either he didn't agree with or it annoyed him or what. Um, so he rejected.
Oh.
So I said yet that, I was upset and I said that, is there anything I can do? The author is very upset and disturbed. So again, my bosses, again, they were very nice about it. They said, well, what you can do, you can offer to pay for the publishing, but don't put the Oxford imprint on it. But at least he'll have his book.
Wow.
So I think I did that. And, to some extent, he was mollified because, by the time you get the positive reports and the proposal has been sent to the UK, that is quite at an advanced stage. So after that, if you reject something, it is disappointing.
Yeah.
But fortunately, as I said, we managed to mollify this author, and but otherwise it was really smooth sailing. The only issue that arose was when I was told to stop fiction because my heart was into
Yes.
fiction,
Yes.
also into academic books, publishing non-fiction books.
Yes.
And when I was told to stop publishing fiction, my heart broke. And I said, but how can we do this? Pakistan,
Yes.
over this. By then, also, my bosses had changed. There was a new lot,
Mm.
and they were less. I think a little. I mean, again, very nice, but a little less understanding.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And but I sort of persisted, and I would send proposals, and that this is the advantage. This is how the branch will benefit. So finally, they said, again, I think they did it as a favor. They said, all right, you're allowed to publish textbooks. You can publish any textbook. And I would tell them that, look, but what about Dickens? What about Jane Austen? Aren't they fiction? So they said, well, all right, because you're publishing textbooks that are fiction, you can publish Pakistani writers if their books are prescribed at universities or colleges or schools, if
Well,
they're prescribed. So
yes.
actually, Kamla was.
Right.
She was prescribed. The reluctant fundamentalist was prescribed.
Right.
So I wrote to them and I sent them evidence that, look, it's prescribed at this university. So
Mm-hmm.
I was allowed to publish these two.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, that was some relaxation.
Right. Right.
But another mistake I made when I published The Reluctant Fundamentalist, what I did was I loved the cover, the original cover. I used the original cover.
Okay.
Uh, and then, I got a rocket. They said that this book doesn't look like a textbook. Your other textbooks are different. This doesn't look like a textbook. You're supposed to publish a textbook.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to change the cover of The Reluctant Fundamentalist.
Mm-hmm. But you still were able
Um,
to publish it, and that's what
yes, I was able to publish it,
yes.
and Mohsen was very pleased
Mm-hmm.
because he wanted it available in Pakistan at a cheap Pakistani price because it was a textbook.
Yes.
So that we managed to do. We were really supplying it at a rock bottom price. Of course, the printing wasn't like the imported ones,
Mm-hmm.
but students could afford it.
And there's so much to talk to you about that I want to cover, and I also want to cover, Asif Farokhi and the Karachi Literature Festival that you started. You were the pioneer there, and in 2010. And can you speak to that at all?
Yes, I would love to. I mean, Asif and I have, we've been working together and we were friends for 25 years, at least a quarter of a century. And he always said that, Ameena, we are partners in crime. Um, and it wasn't, I mean, I knew him long before the festival because realized, whenever I met him, I realized that his knowledge of Urdu and Urdu literature, and in fact, world literatures, um, it was so vast. And I said, I can learn so much from him. And then I started gradually, um, depending on him. If I got an Urdu manuscript, I would send it to Asif. And finally, I reached a stage when I would not publish any Urdu book unless Asif had approved it.
Hmm.
Um, and, our Urdu publishing just um, went, you know, it grew and grew and it became a very important part of our publishing. And that
Mhm.
was because of us.
Mhm.
Of course, he did a lot of editorial work. He would introduce some books, do the editing, introduce me to authors, um, and including a lot of American and British authors who were specialists in Urdu literature. Francis Pritchett, for
Yes.
example.
Yes.
Um, and it was only through Asif that I got to know them.
Mm-hmm.
And, then I went to, but I was very conscious of the fact that these people are so brilliant, but, they're not appreciated or recognized or rewarded for their work in
Mm-hmm.
Pakistan.
Mm-hmm.
And I started, I wrote one or two articles that were published in Dawn to say that please give awards to our authors, credible awards.
Mm-hmm.
And the award should carry some, cash to go with it. Um, then I went to Jaipur Literature Festival in 29, and there I saw the Indian authors. I saw how they were treated, like rock stars, like celebrities.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, you know, what our authors are not any less than these people.
Mm-hmm.
They need the same kind of platform and treatment. And that's when I decided. And I have to say that while I was in Jaipur, I decided I'm going to have my own festival where we will celebrate our authors. And the British Council people were there in Delhi in a big way. And I went to them. I said, look, this is my plan. This is who I am. This is what I'd like to do. They said, oh, really? Well, we will introduce you to some people in the UK, talk to them, and maybe they can help you. So they were very nice, very forthcoming.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that.
Mm-hmm.
And, immediately they said, when are you coming to London next? And fortunately, I did go. I was going. And I met them. And they were very supportive. And they said that, and the people in Karachi were equally supportive.
Mm-hmm.
So that gave me a lot of confidence. And then, of course, Asif, I mentioned it to Asif. He didn't think for a second. He said, I'm doing this with you. So that's how actually we started. And the British Council told us that, we'll give you a room in our office here at the British High Commission and you can come in. That can become your secretariat. We'll give you. They were so supportive. Uh, I must say, I'm really very grateful to them because at that stage, you need that kind of push and that support, and it just worked and it took off. We had our first festival in 2010 at the Carlton Hotel,
Right.
and 5,000 people came, Maniza,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
to that festival.
I
And
remember.
I remember telling William Dalrymple later, I said, 5,000 people came to my first festival. He said, really? Do you know how many came to my first Jaipur? 40. So, and
40,
then he
no,
started joking. He said,
40,000.
so actually, it was a huge number.
Yes.
And after that, of course, there were issues. For example, the media began criticizing us. They said this is an elitist thing. They're having it in an area in an expensive part of defense where there are no public buses. So I took that very seriously. That's why I shifted it in 2012. I shifted it to beach luxury
Mm-hmm.
because I knew that it was people could come in public buses, and that worked because people would come from Liari. There was a direct bus to beach luxury,
Mm-hmm.
and hundreds of people would come from Liari.
Oh, yes. So,
Uh,
Ameena, just to clarify, the first festival, of course, at Carlton had 5,000 people. And William Dalrymple told you that how many people came to the Jaipur festival, the first one?
40.
40.
Yes, can you imagine?
And we had 5,000 people in 2010 at the Carlton, just loving every moment of it.
That's right. And later in 15, 16, 17, 18, we had over a lakh attending, sometimes 1.5 lakhs, 1,75,000 attending our festivals at Beach Luxury.
Yes.
You couldn't walk, it was so packed
Yes.
at times. I'm sure you remember.
Yes, I do. You're
But
absolutely.
my dream came true because there was a little boy from on a Sunday. A little boy came with his father from Liari,
Mhm.
and there was a book fair over there. And he told his, and I heard him tell his father that today's Sunday, so why are there books here? And I realized that these children feel that books are only for school. When they go to school, they read books. So here we were giving them, letting them know that, you read books all the time on holidays and they're fun. We created that aspiration in
Yes.
them. And I still remember Puji, Ijaz Ahmad, Fakir Ijazuddin,
Mm-hmm.
who spoke, he was speaking in a session, and some other little boy was standing right at the end, and I was also standing at the end watching the. So when the time for question and answer came, he raised his little hand. He kept it raised, but somehow, he didn't get a chance to ask a question. So I turned to him. I said, "Beta, what question did you want to ask?" I said that, I'm sorry you didn't get a chance, but I'll get an answer for you. So he said, I want to ask him. He told me in Urdu. He said, I want to ask him how I can learn to speak English like him.
Oh.
And my heart broke. And but I just felt that, here is an aspiration that is developing in his heart and in his mind. And maybe one day he will learn English, like Fakir Ijazuddin. But these are lovely moments
Mm.
at the festival.
Ameena, tell me a little bit about, I'm thinking about your family, about your sister Noshaba Birnie, and her husband, and their influence on, I mean, it seems like your family milieu was of intellectuals, writing, reading, publishing.
Yes, absolutely. My khala, my aunt was Quratullah and Heather,
Mm-hmm.
and I spent a lot of time with her in Delhi, uh, in Noida. Then when she lived in Noida, and that had an enormous impact on me.
Quratul
Um,
Heather was your khala?
yes, she was my mother's cousin,
Mm-hmm.
but my mother was very close to her.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever I went to Delhi, uh, and I was a frequent visitor to Delhi in those days. I would stay with her or spend time with her, and she would come to Karachi. So I spent a lot of time with her, and we used to have long chats, and that had a huge impact on me.
Mm-hmm.
And I still remember as a tiny, when she was living in Karachi, in the with her mother before she migrated to India.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, she used to she used to live with another cousin of hers who was also my aunt. So my mother would take me to their house,
Mm-hmm.
and she would be sitting in the drawing room writing Aag Ka Darya. I've actually seen her write Aag Ka Darya.
Where did they live?
She lived in Moripur
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, with her cousin who was a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
She was a doctor in the Air Force, so she had a house in Moripur.
So you
And
actually saw her writing Kadaria.
she would write a few lines on a page, and then she would throw that page on the floor, then pick up another page and write on few lines, throw that. She wouldn't fill the whole page.
Hmm.
Um, and maybe it was one thought per page. And then later, she would tell all the children that now pick up all my pages. I'll give you 5 rupees if you pick up all the pages, put them in order, and give them to me. That's how she wrote Akka Darya. But of course, you're talking about Noshaba and her husband Iqbal.
Mhm.
Actually, it was through them that, I used to sit around, listen to them, their friends, and their conversations. And, I just became very interested in what they used to say. Um, and I learned a lot from them, but also from my father, who was a bookworm. He used to, he had a copy of Pickwick Papers, which he would read and reread. And if you opened any page, you would find notes on the side, lines, page, underlines.
Mhm.
Uh, and so that was a tradition really in our family.
And
Uh,
your brother-in-law, Shahbaz's husband, he was an editor of a paper, was he not?
yes, he was an editor of Outlook,
Hmm.
which was a weekly,
Hmm.
and it was shut down by Ayub Khan
Because.
uh, because he was critical of Ayub Khan,
Mhm.
and I published his editorials,
Mhm.
and in one of the editorials, and I believe that was why it was shut down. He wrote that they say that when flatterers meet, the devil goes to dinner. What happened last week when Ayub Khan came to Karachi
Mhm.
must have sent the devil feasting for a week, and and after that was the end of Outlook.
That was the end of Outlook. And wasn't Outlook a paper, a journal with a socialist outlook?
Yes, absolutely. It was a fearless newspaper. It used to, um, if you read the Outlook that was published after 71,
Mhm.
after the creation of Bangladesh, you will get a totally independent range of opinions on what happened,
Mhm.
which I also published. And when you are here next, I can give you a copy of that if
Yes,
you're interested.
I'm very interested. Mhm.
Um, and but then it was shut down. Then later, when Bhutto came to power, he revived it,
Mhm.
and I think it probably lasted a year or so. I'm not sure, but again, I'm not sure what he wrote the second time. But it was shut down the second. Then he gave up journalism,
Oh, I'll take a
and he
guess that he wrote something similar. Uh, uh,
yes must have some. I Somehow I haven't come across that. It was critical enough for Outlook to be banned, and
mhm.
the way that they would do it, they wouldn't say it's banned. They would go to the printer and say, "Don't you dare print this, otherwise we'll shut your printing house down."
Yeah.
The
Well,
printer wouldn't print. And I remember Noshaba saying that he's going from printer to printer, but they're all refusing to print it.
right.
So that's how it wasn't. It died.
Yeah. And
Uh,
nowadays they just withdraw their advertising and you're done for.
yes, you can't survive. There's so many ways. But
And
then he was so disheartened, he gave up. He said, then he set up they had to survive. So he set up an advertising agency called Ad Group,
okay.
which did very well.
Oh, that's wonderful. I didn't think that he would have had a temperament for an advertising agency.
But
But
yes, but he was very good at writing copy.
yeah, yeah,
So I think maybe that's what made it so popular.
yes.
And then, he had a lot of friends and a lot of admirers.
Hmm.
And people knew in those days what happened to him. So they would actually give him business as a form of appreciation or support or whatever.
Yes.
But, his copy was apparently outstanding.
Yeah. And tell us some more about Kuratula and Heather.
Um,
Any?
well,
Yeah.
I went to visit her. Actually, the year she died in 2007.
Mhm.
I think around July or August. I stayed with her for a week in January. Um, and I went with a niece of mine. We were both staying in a house in Noida. And, we would spend the day with her. And by then, she'd had a fall. She couldn't write. So in the mornings, a chap would come and but she didn't stop writing. She would dictate. And he would be writing what she dictated. And this was in winter, so she'd be sitting out in the sun.
Hmm.
Um, and she used to have a lot of friends over. And what a sense of humor she had.
Mhm.
She used to make fun of people's, and it was quite a naughty sense, mischievous sense of humor. She'd make fun of people's accents. She'd make fun of whatever they would say, and she would say, "Oh, so and so, she has copied my stories. She's plagiarized my story." She'd be very angry, very outspoken.
Mhm.
um, about and I remember once by mistake, because in Pakistan you started hearing Allah Hafiz.
Yeah.
So I mentioned, I just said it because I heard it so much it came out. She was so angry about but then my niece and I, in the evening, we would go. There was a mall near her house. We would walk 10 or 15 minutes, go to the mall, watch a movie, have a dinner there, roam around, and come walk back at night. She'd be waiting for us. And she would say, "Where were you?" I said, "Well, we went to the mall." She said, "Don't you know?" She would say in Urdu, "You're dangling your purse and coming down, walking alone at night at this time. What if somebody stole your purse?" She would really shout at us. And I would say, "Okay, then we'll be careful. Next time we'll take a rickshaw back." And but I mean, look at her um, sort of affection
Yes.
that she would wait for us, although she was not a late, which wouldn't stay up late at night. She could, and then she would call me Munni, which is my nickname. She would say, "Munni, you take a bath in my bathroom because that's the only bathroom in the house that has a heater."
Oh,
So she's very, very, very sweet. And I didn't know that 6 months later she'd be gone.
huh. What a lovely and affectionate memory you have of her.
Yes, absolutely. Um, she was great fun with
Mhm.
her humor, and it was no holds barred.
So wicked. And and tell us of the
Yes.
funnest thing that you might have done with her.
Oh, the fun things.
Yeah.
Well, actually, she didn't go out much. So whatever time I spent was with her in her house. And there was a very good friend of hers called Ameena Ahuja,
Mm-hmm.
um, who was an Indian Muslim. And she was a frequent visitor to her house. And, you know, it was used to be such fun seeing them together, the way they would laugh and, the guffaws, and they would make fun of people. Um, and it was just, so entertaining being in her company. And especially, she would make fun of provincial accents of, again, in a very good-hearted, there's nothing vicious about it. It was just her natural self that, and she used to be very careful. I wanted to take pictures of her, and she would not allow me till she was fully dressed and fully made up. She was very conscious of how she would appear in a picture.
Mm-hmm.
You could never take a picture of her unless she was fully made up.
Mm-hmm.
And she had orange hair that she used to dye, put mehndi, and she'd put on bright red lipstick.
Mm-hmm.
And then she would actually pose for a picture, and then you could take a picture. Oh, begone anyone who took a picture without warning her.
What a character.
Yes, what a character, but so creative.
Yes, so creative, so different, so much her own person, um, so amazing. And Ameena, thank you so much. The hour has just flown, and I've got my eyes on the clock, and I can tell that we're running out of time. But this has been an absolute pleasure, and you are such a storyteller, and you are also very unique. Um, and thank you for all that you have done and are doing for publishing, for books, for writing, for reading. Thank you so much for all you do.
Thank you, Maniza. It's been wonderful talking to you. And we go back a long way. And I just feel so comfortable. I felt like I could say anything I thought. So thank you for this opportunity, and it's lovely that Little Book Company is having these podcasts. And actually, I'm going to listen to every one of them. I think this is the 21st. I know the earlier ones that you've done, and you've got some wonderful people that you've interviewed, and I'm so glad to be in their company.
Well, you are in their company, but you're also in the company, your own company. How do you say it? Your own company. You're unique and you're singular. And I have a lump in my throat. I might be overdoing it, but yes, we go a long way. And you got me started in my novel writing. And thank you so much, Ameena. You are an amazing person, and what a joy it is to know you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Maniza. All the best.